The Earth had always been a small dot in the vastness of the universe. Humans had spent centuries staring at the stars, wondering if there was anyone else out there, or if they were truly alone. The discovery of alien life had always been a distant dream, something to fantasize about in the quiet moments before sleep. But that all changed one fateful morning. On the 4th of August, 2050, the Earth's observatories began picking up strange signals, signals that had no natural explanation. They weren't just radio waves or random cosmic noise. These signals were deliberate, organized, intelligent, and they were coming from deep within space. At first, the scientists dismissed it as an anomaly, something too strange to be real. But the signals grew more frequent, and then they started to grow louder. The signals were not just messages. They were commands. Earth. A booming, mechanical voice filled the communications channels worldwide. You have been identified as a primitive species. You will surrender your planet to the Galactic Empire immediately, or face total destruction. Humanity froze. No one knew what to think. No one knew how to react. The Empire had no name, no face, just this cold, unfeeling voice, and the threat of annihilation. The voice continued, speaking in languages no human had ever heard before, but somehow everyone understood the message. Earth was not special. Earth was just another planet to be claimed by the Empire. "We come to conquer," the voice said, "and you will comply. There is no escape." It was a moment that shook the world to its core. The idea of a galactic empire seemed like something out of a science fiction novel. Yet here it was, staring humanity in the face. At first, the humans were afraid. How could they not be? Their entire civilization seemed like nothing compared to the might of a galactic empire. But as the minutes passed, a strange thing began to happen. Fear started to turn into confusion. The voice, though threatening, lacked any real warmth or understanding. There was no emotion behind it, just cold logic. It made the humans think. "We're not just going to let them take over without a fight," Captain Area West muttered to herself as she watched the Empire's ships approach from the edge of the solar system. She was the captain of one of the newest human ships, the Sentinel, a symbol of Earth's rising potential in space, and she was ready for anything. But as the first images of the Empire's fleet appeared on the news channels, humanity's initial fear began to fade. Instead of enormous battleships, the ships that hovered over Earth were absurd. They were massive, sure, enormous, but their shapes were strange, almost comical. Long, jagged spikes protruded from their hulls, and they seemed to wobble as they entered orbit. To the humans, it looked like a fleet of ancient sea creatures. One ship even had what appeared to be oversized fins, like the fins of a fish, making it look more like a floating aquatic nightmare than a deadly war machine. "Is that supposed to be scary?" someone in the crowd asked, laughing nervously. "It looks like a giant space porcupine." The laughter started as a trickle and soon grew into a roar. The people of Earth, united by fear, found something they hadn't expected: humor. Here they were, facing an alien empire, and yet the very sight of their ships made them chuckle. Humanity's response was instant and surprisingly unified. You'd think they'd try to look a little more menacing, right? Arya joked, staring at the images of the alien fleet on her ship's command screen. Her crew erupted into laughter. "Are we really supposed to be afraid of that?" One of her officers said. "It's like they tried to make a ship that could win a bad fashion contest." And the more they looked, the more absurd the situation seemed. The Empire had not only underestimated humanity's ability to respond, but they also didn't realize that their grand fleet, intended to intimidate, had turned into a cosmic joke. Arya shook her head, fighting back laughter as she spoke into the comms. "Let's not let these things spoil our day. We've got a planet to save." But the joke wasn't lost on the rest of the world. News channels started to air memes of the alien ships, and social media exploded with humor. Humans began to share jokes about the Empire's designs, calling their ships everything from space cactus to flying furniture. No one had expected this, least of all the humans themselves. "I thought we were supposed to be quaking in our boots," one news anchor said, chuckling. "Instead, I can't stop laughing." It wasn't that humanity didn't understand the danger. They did. But the Empire's arrival, so sudden and so strange, had created a wave of unexpected humor. It was as though the very nature of the Empire was laughable, and in doing so, it helped humans find the courage to face their would-be conquerors. The humans weren't going to give up without a fight, and for the first time in history, Earth united not only through fear, but through laughter. This laughter, however, wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign of defiance. As the fleet of human ships began to align in defense, Captain Area West gave a wry smile. "Let them come," she said. "Let them see what happens when you try to intimidate humanity." And with that, the first battle between the Earth and the Galactic Empire began. But it wasn't going to be what anyone expected. The morning after the Empire's arrival, the entire world was buzzing. News outlets around the globe had replayed the announcement over and over. Every human seemed to be talking about the same thing: the Galactic Empire. And yet, as the day went on, the feeling of fear that should have taken hold was nowhere to be found. Instead, people were more confused than scared. The Empire's ships loomed large in the sky, but their strange designs made them seem more like some sort of bizarre art project than deadly war vessels. Still, the humans couldn't afford to ignore them. The messages coming through their communication systems had been clear: surrender now or face destruction. "We've never seen anything like this before," said Dr. Edwin Harris, a scientist and expert in extraterrestrial communication. "These beings claim to be from an empire that spans the galaxy. But so far, all we know is that they like to make big speeches." The first of these speeches came just hours after their arrival. It echoed through the airwaves, loud and formal, as though the speaker believed every word could crush humanity's spirit. "People of Earth," the voice boomed, "you are primitive and insignificant. You stand before a civilization that has conquered hundreds of worlds. Your resistance will be crushed. Surrender now, and your people will be spared." Area West, still at the helm of the Sentinel, had just finished reviewing the details of the alien ships when the message came through. She leaned back in her chair and listened carefully, but instead of fear, she couldn't help but smirk. "Did they just call us primitive?" she muttered, looking around at her crew. Everyone on board was either chuckling or shaking their heads. It was hard to take the Empire seriously when they spoke with such arrogant confidence, especially when they didn't seem to understand the humans they were facing. The message continued: "We offer you one chance to surrender. If you do not comply, we will show you the true might of the Galactic Empire. Your cities will burn. Your world will fall." There was a pause, and then the voice added, as if to emphasize the threat, "This is your final warning." Captain West let out a laugh. It wasn't a mocking laugh, but more of a realization that this wasn't the way things were going to unfold. The Empire might have power, but they didn't have the one thing humanity possessed: creativity. It was something the Empire seemed to have overlooked entirely. "So let me get this straight," Arya said, turning to her crew. "They think we're just going to roll over and surrender because they threatened us with burning cities." She threw up her hands. "Is that their best shot?" One of the crew members, Lieutenant Sarah Chung, grinned. "Honestly, Captain, if they think that is going to scare us, they're in for a surprise." The rest of the crew nodded. Humanity had faced so many challenges throughout history: wars, natural disasters, and struggles for survival, that a big speech about burning cities didn't quite hold the same weight. In fact, it only made the crew more determined to fight. Back on Earth, the message was broadcast worldwide, and people were listening closely. But instead of trembling in fear, they were starting to see the humor in it. The Empire's words seemed so grandiose, so over the top, that it almost didn't make sense. A message demanding surrender with no real explanation or understanding of Earth's people wasn't going to work. Humans weren't known for following orders without question. On social media, the memes started almost immediately. Images of the Empire's ships were paired with sarcastic captions, making fun of their overly serious tone. A popular meme featured a picture of the Empire's ships with the caption, "When you try to look menacing, but end up looking like a cosmic porcupine." In every corner of the globe, humans were mocking the very thing that was meant to scare them. Even leaders of the world were finding it hard to keep a straight face. At the United Nations, the President of the United States stood at the podium with a slightly bemused expression. "I don't know about you all," he said, "but I think the Empire may have misjudged us. Anyone who thinks we're just going to lay down and surrender without understanding who they're dealing with, well, they don't know humanity." The audience chuckled in agreement. Despite the seriousness of the situation, people couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The Empire might have had the power, but they lacked the one thing that humans had in abundance: the ability to laugh in the face of danger. "Let them come," the President continued, "because if they think we're just going to roll over, they've got another thing coming." Meanwhile, Aria and her crew were working hard to plan their next move. The Empire had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to stand up to challenges. While the Galactic Empire might have controlled galaxies, humans had something else: resourcefulness. If they could take something as terrifying as this alien threat and turn it into a joke, they had a fighting chance. Captain West sat at her command table, eyes scanning the map of the Earth's orbit. "We won't be fighting this with weapons alone," she said. "We'll fight it with our ingenuity, our humor, and our creativity. The Empire thinks we're primitive. Let's show them just how creative we can be." The crew burst into applause. They knew it wasn't going to be easy, but they also knew that they were ready. The Empire might have thought they could crush humanity with their threats, but what they didn't realize was that humans didn't give up easily, and they certainly didn't scare easily. They'd find a way to turn this situation around, no matter what. As the Empire's fleet waited in the distance, preparing for their next move, the humans of Earth prepared theirs. They would show the galaxy that no matter how big, how powerful, or how menacing an enemy might seem, humans always had one thing that no one could ever take from them: the ability to laugh, to fight back, and to survive. As the days passed, the strange ships of the Galactic Empire hovered ominously in Earth's skies. They were impossible to ignore. Massive and imposing, they dominated the heavens, casting shadows over the planet. However, despite their immense size and intimidating presence, humans remained defiant. The jokes continued to circulate, and with every new meme or sarcastic comment, the Empire's threats began to feel less real and more like a bad joke. The Galactic Empire had made it clear that they would not wait forever. They had given humanity a deadline. In just 72 hours, they expected an answer: surrender or face the consequences. The voice that spoke through their communication system, cold and mechanical, had promised destruction. But to the humans, the Empire seemed out of touch with their adversary. How could anyone take them seriously? As Earth's leaders gathered in their war rooms to discuss the situation, there was a new sense of hope that wasn't there before. The Empire may have had superior technology, but they had also shown a critical weakness: they didn't understand humans. In a meeting in the United Nations, President Sarah Daniels addressed the world's leaders. "They're expecting us to be scared," she said, her voice strong and clear. "They think they can bully us into submission. But if there's one thing that humans don't do, it's give in to threats." "We need to be smart," said General Marcus Rivera, Earth's top strategist. "The Empire has power, no doubt about it. But we have something they can't even comprehend: a deep well of creativity, resourcefulness, and yes, humor." Everyone in the room nodded in agreement. Humanity had always been a species that found a way to adapt, to think outside the box. And now, they would need all that ingenuity to survive. Meanwhile, Captain Area West was still aboard the Sentinel, leading the fleet of human ships that had been quickly assembled in response to the Empire's demands. She paced around the command center, thinking through the options. The human fleet wasn't large, and their ships were nowhere near as advanced as the Empire's. But they had one thing going for them: unpredictability. What we lack in firepower, we make up for with flexibility, she said, speaking to her crew. We need to make them question everything they think they know about us. They want to intimidate us with their size. Fine, but we won't let them control the narrative. We're going to make them second-guess every move they make. The crew agreed. Every officer knew that the key to defeating an enemy like the Galactic Empire was not in trying to match their power head-on, but in using their overconfidence against them. The following day, the first of the Empire's Grand Fleet ships made their move. The largest and most fearsome of their vessels, a towering behemoth called the Emperor's Wrath, began to descend into Earth's orbit, sending shockwaves through the atmosphere as it broke the sound barrier. It was a ship built to inspire fear, its sleek black exterior adorned with sharp edges and glowing red lights. It was the type of ship one would imagine a galactic overlord using to make their enemies tremble. But when the humans saw it from the ground, their reactions were not what the Empire had hoped for. Instead of cowering in terror, people on Earth were confused, then amused. Is that thing really supposed to be intimidating? Someone on Earth tweeted. It looks like a floating black jelly bean with lasers. As the Emperor's Wrath made its way to a lower orbit, the people watching from Earth and space couldn't help but laugh. There was something about its aggressive posture, its sharp edges, and its over-the-top design that made it seem more cartoonish than menacing. Area West was the first to crack a smile when she saw the ships approach. If they think that's going to scare us, well, they're in for a big surprise, she said with a grin. She quickly ordered her fleet to take position. The Sentinel and its fellow ships moved into place, but rather than preparing for a direct confrontation, they began to deploy an array of unusual tactics that the Empire had not anticipated. Remember, Area reminded her crew, we're not just facing them head-on. We need to be unpredictable. On Earth, news outlets were broadcasting the entire event live. The Emperor's Wrath hovered like a massive storm cloud over the planet, while human ships below maneuvered in ways that were anything but traditional. Instead of aligning in a neat formation, the human fleet moved like a scattered group of birds, weaving in and out, making it difficult to track their movements. Area had a simple strategy: confuse them. The human ships would use their small size and fast movements to disorient the Empire's sensors. They would appear to move in ways that made no sense, throwing off the Empire's targeting systems. And it worked. The Empire's flagship, Emperor's Wrath, was firing on all cylinders, aiming at human ships that never stayed in one spot long enough to be hit. Every time a shot was fired, the humans moved, and the shot would miss. The Empire's precision, designed for total dominance, was useless against a target that refused to stand still. As the Emperor's Wrath fired again, one of the human ships darted out of the way just in time. The blast from the Empire's cannon hit another one of their own ships, by accident. The human crew erupted in laughter. I didn't think I'd ever see the day when the Empire shot itself in the foot, Lieutenant Chung said, barely able to keep her composure. But the real turning point came when the human fleet used their creativity to turn the situation on its head. Instead of trying to overpower the Empire's fleet with brute force, they deployed a series of holographic projections that created false images of human ships all over the area. The Emperor's Wrath was now firing at nothing but empty space. The Empire had no idea where the real ships were, and it was driving them crazy. The Empire's arrogance had led them to think that their fleet would crush humanity with a single blow. But instead, it was becoming clear that the humans weren't going to make it that easy. While the Galactic Empire's fleet was struggling to deal with the unexpected, the humans had something they had never anticipated: the ability to laugh and outsmart their enemies. And as Earth's citizens watched in awe, They realized that the battle for their survival wasn't going to be won with force. It was going to be won with cunning, humor, and a little bit of good old-fashioned human creativity. As the days went on, the Galactic Empire's frustration grew. Their fleet, once confident and imposing, was now locked in a battle of wits with the species they had underestimated. The humans were doing the impossible, making their advanced technology look ineffective and their threats laughable. On the Emperor's Wrath, the flagship of the Empire, the high-ranking officers were losing patience. General Xerath, the leader of the fleet, stood in front of a large control screen, watching in disbelief as the humans continued to outmaneuver them. His face, usually cold and calculating, was now filled with irritation. "How are they doing this?" Xerath demanded, his voice sharp and angry. His officers scrambled to make sense of the situation. They had expected a swift victory over a primitive species. Instead, they were facing an enemy that seemed to have no fear and no predictable patterns. The humans were using unconventional tactics, weaving through space like a swarm of insects, never staying in one place long enough for the Empire's weapons to hit them. "We have their positions," one of the officers said, his voice filled with frustration. "But every time we fire, they move. They're unpredictable. They must be using some kind of advanced cloaking technology," another officer suggested. "It's the only explanation." But the truth was much simpler than that. The humans weren't using anything extraordinary. They were just thinking differently. They didn't have the power to match the Empire's firepower, but they did have something far more valuable: creativity. Back on Earth, the mood was one of quiet optimism. News outlets had stopped covering the Empire's threats so seriously, and instead, broadcasts focused on the humans' ingenuity. The global reaction to the Empire's fleet was a mix of curiosity, excitement, and disbelief. People had gone from being scared of the Empire's arrival to being fascinated by how the human fleet was handling the situation. "The Empire's supposed to be unbeatable," said one news anchor. "And yet here we are, watching them lose to some clever tactics and a bit of human humor." Social media had exploded with images of the Empire's ships being mocked. Memes and jokes about their designs were being shared faster than anyone could count. One popular meme depicted a human ship dodging a blast from the Emperor's Wrath, with the caption, "When you're trying to conquer a planet, but you can't even hit the broadside of a barn." While the world laughed, Captain Area West and her crew remained focused. They were fully aware that the humor and memes were helping to keep morale high, but they knew that they had to keep their minds on the task at hand. This wasn't a game. It was a fight for their survival. Still, the humor couldn't be completely ignored. Area couldn't help but grin whenever she saw the latest meme or joke about the Empire. "Captain," Lieutenant Chung said, breaking Area from her thoughts, "the Empire's getting more desperate. They're launching a new offensive. It looks like they're going to try to surround us." Area nodded. "Let them try. We've outsmarted them at every turn so far. If they think we're going to sit still and let them trap us, they'd got another thing coming." Meanwhile, the Empire was growing more and more puzzled by humanity's behavior. They had expected fear, panic, and chaos. But instead, they were encountering something entirely unexpected. The humans weren't running. They weren't even reacting with the kind of panic they had seen in other conquered worlds. No, they were fighting back in a way that defied all logic. "General, we've analyzed their movements," one of Xerath's officers said, sounding defeated. "They aren't following any sort of predictable battle strategy. We can't lock onto their ships. They're using old tactics, things that we haven't seen in centuries. It's like they're outwitting us at every turn." Xerath clenched his fists. "How is this possible? We've had centuries of conquest. We've obliterated entire civilizations without even breaking a sweat. And now we're losing to these humans." His frustration was palpable, but deep down, a tiny seed of doubt had begun to grow. He had never faced an enemy like this before, an enemy that didn't fear him, didn't fear his weapons, and most surprising of all, didn't seem to fear the vast power of the Galactic Empire. "We'll have to rethink our approach," Xerath finally muttered, his voice low. "This isn't going to be as easy as we thought." Back on Earth, humanity's victory wasn't just happening in space. The people of Earth had begun to unite in ways they had never done before. The challenge posed by the Galactic Empire had forced every nation to set aside differences, work together, and support the common goal of defending their planet. The world's leaders had been meeting daily to share intelligence, strategies, and updates. The global effort to defend Earth was a shining example of what could happen when humans put their minds together. The memes and jokes about the Empire's ships continued to bring lightness to an otherwise serious situation, but the world knew they couldn't afford to become complacent. In the United Nations, President Sarah Daniels addressed the planet's leaders. "We've seen what humanity is capable of when we stand together," she said. "Now we must take that same unity and apply it to our next move. The Empire thinks we're weak, but we've shown them that we're anything but. We've outsmarted them. We've made them question their assumptions, and now we'll push forward with everything we've got." The room erupted in applause. For the first time since the arrival of the Empire, humanity wasn't just hoping to survive. They were starting to believe that victory was possible. Meanwhile, Captain Area West and her crew were preparing for the next phase of their defense. They knew that the Empire would soon make their most aggressive move yet, but the humans were ready. They had proven that they could outthink the Empire, and now they would take that knowledge and use it to their advantage. "We've got them on the ropes," Area said with a determined look in her eyes. "But we can't stop now. We need to push harder, faster, and with everything we've got." The human fleet readied themselves for the next phase of the battle. The Empire may have had technology, but the humans had something even more powerful: the will to survive. And that was something no empire could conquer. The Galactic Empire, once so confident in their ability to conquer, had begun to realize that Earth was not the easy target they had imagined. Every day, their grand ships grew more and more frustrated as they attempted to capture the humans' fleet, only to find themselves outsmarted at every turn. No one had expected the humans to fight back with such cunning. Captain Area West stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, watching the Empire's fleet from a distance. The Emperor's Wrath, their largest and most powerful ship, was still in orbit, but it had become clear that their weapons were failing to hit their targets. It was almost as if they were playing a game, and the Empire was losing. "We've done well so far," Lieutenant Chang said as she approached Area. "But I think it's time to go on the offensive. We got them right where we want them." Area nodded thoughtfully. She had spent hours analyzing the Empire's movements, studying their ships, and understanding their tactics. The Empire, it seemed, was stuck in their ways, relying on the same methods that had worked in countless other worlds. But on Earth, things were different. The humans were unpredictable, and that was their greatest weapon. "What are you thinking, Captain?" Chung asked. Area looked up at the large display screen. The Empire's ships were grouped together in a tight formation, trying to corner the human fleet. "It's time for the Empire to realize something," she said, her voice calm but determined. "We've been playing defense, but it's time to take the fight to them." She turned to her crew. "Prepare the fleet. We're going to give them a taste of their own medicine." The human ships quickly went into action. The plan was simple: confuse the Empire further, throw them off balance, and hit them where it would hurt most. While the Empire had been focused on taking down the human ships, they had failed to notice the other thing that Earth had that no other planet did: the ability to adapt quickly. Area's strategy was bold. They would use their smaller, more agile ships to break into the Empire's tight formation and sow chaos. The Sentinel and its fleet would weave through the Empire's lines, creating fake signatures of human ships with advanced holograms, while their real ships would stay hidden, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Let's make sure they regret ever underestimating us," Area said, and the crew cheered in agreement. Meanwhile, on the Emperor's Wrath, General Xerath was becoming more anxious. His ships had been unable to land a single direct hit on the humans. Their unpredictability was making it impossible to gain the upper hand. Every time they fired, they missed. Every time they tried to predict a move, the humans surprised them with something new. Xerath was losing control of the situation, and it was beginning to eat away at his confidence. "Prepare for another round of fire," Xerath ordered, trying to maintain his composure. "This time, we'll break them." But as he gave the order, something strange happened. The human ships, which had once been scattered and hard to hit, began to move differently. Instead of scattering, they suddenly grouped together in a way that was completely unexpected. At first, the Empire thought it was a trap, a feint to draw them in. But as the humans advanced, it became clear this was a direct attack. The human fleet moved with such speed and precision that it seemed almost like a well-coordinated dance. The Empire's ships had no time to react. Arya watched from the Sentinel as the human ships closed in on the Empire's fleet. Her heart raced, but she remained calm. This was their moment. The first wave of the human ships moved in, breaking through the Empire's defenses. The Empire had expected to fight off individual human ships, but instead they found themselves caught in a whirlwind of coordinated attacks. The humans were fast, agile, and creative, taking full advantage of their small size and ability to move unpredictably. One by one, the Empire's ships began to show signs of damage. The Emperor's wrath fired wildly, trying to target the incoming human ships, but the human fleet was too quick. Each attack missed by inches, and with every missed shot, the Empire's frustration grew. The tables had turned. The humans weren't just defending anymore. They were attacking with purpose. The Sentinel led the charge, its sleek design allowing it to dart in and out of the Empire's defenses. Arya's voice came over the comms. "Now, let's show them what happens when you mess with Earth." The Sentinel fired a few well-placed shots, not aiming to destroy the Empire's ships, but to disable their weapons and communication systems. One by one, the Empire's ships were knocked offline, leaving their fleet in disarray. The humans' plan was working. The Empire's once powerful force was crumbling under the pressure of human ingenuity. As the Empire's ships began to fall back, General Xerath was left seething with frustration. He watched helplessly as his fleet scattered, unable to make a stand against the humans. His once proud fleet, feared across the galaxy, was now a mere shadow of its former self. "They're mocking us," Xerath shouted. "These humans, they're mocking the might of the Empire." But the truth was undeniable. The humans were winning. The Empire had come to Earth with the expectation of easy domination, but instead they had encountered a species unlike any they had ever faced before. The humans were clever, resourceful, and determined to protect their world. And now, with the Empire in full retreat, they were beginning to understand just how strong humanity could be. Back on Earth, the people were watching in awe. News outlets were broadcasting the fight live, and the entire planet was on the edge of their seats. The idea that the humans could push back the Galactic Empire was more than just a dream. It was becoming a reality. The victory wasn't final yet, but the human fleet had delivered a crushing blow to the Empire. The battle had turned in humanity's favor, and the message was clear. The Galactic Empire had underestimated the resilience of Earth's people, and now they would have to face the consequences. Arya West looked out from the bridge of the Sentinel, her face filled with pride. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, the Empire was on the back foot. Humanity had fought back, and they had made their mark on the galaxy. And it wasn't just a victory for Earth. It was a victory for every species that had ever been oppressed, every civilization that had ever been crushed under the heel of an empire. Humanity had shown them all. Never underestimate the power of a determined people. The victory was sweet, but Arya West and her crew knew that the battle wasn't over. The Empire's fleet had been pushed back, but they were still powerful, and their pride would not allow them to be defeated so easily. The Emperor's Wrath, the massive flagship that had led the invasion, had retreated, but it wasn't gone. It was only regrouping, waiting for the right moment to strike back. As the human fleet took a moment to catch its breath, Commander Harris on the Sentinel looked over the latest data. "They're regrouping," he said grimly. "The Empire isn't done yet." Arya nodded. She had anticipated this. The Empire's arrogance wasn't something that would fade quickly. They would be back, and they would be angrier than ever. "They'll be more aggressive this time," Arya said, her voice steady. "But we're not backing down. We've beaten them before, and we'll do it again." The strategy for the next phase of the battle was already forming in her mind. The humans had proven they could outsmart the Empire, but they couldn't rely on tricks forever. They needed a new approach, something bold, something that would leave no room for doubt. They needed to bring the fight to the Empire and show them that Earth was not a world they could conquer. Back on Earth, the people were watching in anticipation. The news was full of updates about the war, and despite the danger, there was a sense of hope in the air. Humanity had fought back and survived, and the entire planet was rallying behind their defenders. "Victory is possible," President Sarah Daniels said in her speech to the world. "But we must stand together, every nation, every citizen. The Empire may have technology and firepower, but we have something greater, unity and courage. Let's show them that we are not just a target to be destroyed. We are Earth, and we fight for our future." Across the globe, people cheered. There was a newfound energy, a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time in history, humanity wasn't just defending its land, it was defending its very way of life. And they weren't going to let anyone take that away from them. The Empire, meanwhile, was making its preparations. General Exarath stood before a massive war map, watching as his fleet gathered. His face was a mask of frustration, but behind his eyes burned a fierce determination. "We will not be mocked any longer," he growled. "Prepare for the final assault. This time, we will crush them. We will show these humans that they are nothing but insects to be exterminated." The Empire's ships were not just regrouping. They were planning a full-scale offensive. This time, they would come at Earth with everything they had. Their ships were larger, their weapons stronger, and their forces more united than ever. It was a battle that would decide everything. The Emperor's Wrath began to move again, its massive frame cutting through space like a giant predator hunting its prey. The fleet was about to embark on its most aggressive strike yet, and the humans would need to be ready. Arya and her crew watched the approaching threat from the bridge of the Sentinel. The Empire's fleet was overwhelming, but the humans were prepared. The plan was simple. They would use their knowledge of the Empire's weaknesses to hit them where it hurt the most. "We know what they'll do," Arya said, her eyes locked on the approaching fleet. "They'll try to divide us, force us into a corner, and break us apart. But we won't give them that opportunity." The human fleet took its position, spread out in a formation that would allow them to move freely and unpredictably. The Empire might have the advantage in firepower, but the humans had the advantage in agility and determination. "This is it," Arya said, a hint of excitement in her voice. "We either finish this now, or we give them the chance to destroy everything we've worked for." As the two fleets drew closer, the tension in space was palpable. The humans were ready to fight. And the Empire, they were ready to destroy. The first shots rang out as the Empire's fleet launched a massive attack. Blasts of energy erupted from their weapons, cutting through space like lightning. The human ships dodged and weaved, but it was clear that the Empire wasn't holding back this time. They were using every weapon at their disposal, and their fleet was moving as one, coordinated and deadly. Arya's heart pounded in her chest, but her mind was clear. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She spoke quickly to her crew. "Stay focused. Don't let them trap you. Remember what we've learned. We're faster, we're smarter, and we're not backing down." With precision and speed, the human fleet began to retaliate. The Sentinel fired off well-placed shots, targeting the weak spots in the Empire's ships. They knew exactly where to strike. With every hit, the Empire's once proud fleet began to show signs of damage. But the Emperor's wrath was still standing. Its weapons were relentless, and it fired at will, sending waves of energy toward the human ships. Arya saw one of the smaller human ships take a direct hit, its hull breaching in a brilliant flash of light. "No," Arya shouted, clenching her fists. But she didn't allow herself to grieve. Not now. The battle was far from over, and there was no time for hesitation. The human fleet continued its assault, using the Empire's tactics against them. The Empire's ships, once so organized, began to fragment under the relentless pressure. The humans were hitting them from every angle, making it impossible for the Empire to maintain its formation. Then, Arya saw an opening. The Emperor's wrath was slightly off guard, distracted by the chaos around it. With a surge of confidence, Arya gave the command. "All ships, focus fire on the Emperor's wrath. We have one chance to end this." The Sentinel and the rest of the fleet unleashed a torrent of energy blasts, all aimed at the flagship. The shots struck their target with pinpoint accuracy, damaging its weapons and shields. The Empire's pride was faltering. This was the final test, the moment that would decide the fate of Earth. And for the first time, it was clear. The Empire might have been powerful, but the humans had something that no weapon could defeat: the will to protect their home. The battle raged on as the human fleet relentlessly pursued the retreating Empire. The Emperor's wrath, now severely damaged and vulnerable, had become the focus of the human attack. It was clear that the flagship could no longer withstand the onslaught, and General Xerath's frustration had reached its peak. His fleet, once powerful and coordinated, was in chaos. It was no longer a question of whether the Empire would succeed. It was a question of when they would finally admit defeat. "Focus fire on the Emperor's wrath," Arya commanded once more, her voice steady and confident despite the magnitude of the battle. The Sentinel and its allies pressed forward, delivering blow after blow to the Empire's flagship. "We're almost there," Lieutenant Chang said, her eyes glued to the control panel. "The Emperor's wrath is losing its shields. One more direct hit, and it's over." Arya's hands gripped the armrests of her seat. She felt the weight of every decision, every life that had been risked to get to this moment. The human fleet had faced unimaginable odds, and yet they had kept pushing forward. The sheer determination and courage of her crew and of Earth's people were unmatched. But General Xerath was not one to give up easily. As the Emperor's wrath began to flicker under the assault, he barked orders to his officers. "We will not surrender. Fire everything we've got. Do not let them take our flagship." The Empire's remaining ships regrouped for one final desperate attempt. Their weapons charged, and beams of energy shot across the sky, but the humans were ready. They dodged, weaved, and countered with even more precision than before. The Empire's arrogance had blinded them. And now, they were paying the price. Arya's heart raced as the final shots from the human fleet pierced the Emperor's wrath. The massive flagship shuddered under the impact, its systems failing one by one. The lights flickered, and the once mighty ship began to drift, its engines sputtering. "We've done it," Chang whispered, disbelief in her voice. "The Emperor's wrath is down." The entire human fleet let out a collective cheer, but Arya's focus remained unshaken. She knew that the battle was not truly over until the last of the Empire's ships were defeated. The retreating ships had not given up, and Xerath would fight to the very end. As the Emperor's wrath floated helplessly in space, General Xerath's voice crackled over the comms. "This is not over, humans. You may have defeated our flagship, but you have no idea what you've unleashed. The Empire will return. And when we do, we will bring destruction upon you like you've never seen." His words were filled with rage. But there was something else, something that felt almost like fear. Arya stood tall at the helm. She had heard Xerath's threats before, but now they seemed hollow. The Empire had underestimated the power of Earth's people, and they had learned a hard lesson. Sirath's voice faded, leaving only the sound of the damaged flagship's drifting silence. "Captain," Lieutenant Chung said, "the Empire's remaining ships are withdrawing. They're fleeing." Arya looked out into space, watching as the last of the Empire's fleet disappeared into the distance. She had never imagined she would live to see this day. The day when Earth stood victorious over one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. But here they were. Against all odds, humanity had not only survived but triumphed. The people of Earth erupted into celebration. The news broadcasts were filled with stories of victory. Memes that once mocked the Empire now served as symbols of the humans' determination and creativity. Across the globe, people hugged, laughed, and cried in joy. The impossible had been done. In the midst of the celebrations, President Sarah Daniels addressed the world. "We've done it, humanity. We've stood strong. We've fought for our planet, and we've shown the galaxy that Earth is not a place to be conquered. The Empire may have thought they could control us, but we proved them wrong. This victory is not just ours. It's for every species that has ever been oppressed. We've shown that no matter how powerful the enemy, the will of the people can overcome anything." On the Sentinel, Arya looked out the bridge window at the stars. The battle was won, but she knew the journey wasn't over. The Empire would lick its wounds, regroup, and perhaps one day return. But Earth would be ready. The victory they had achieved wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about showing the universe that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. As Arya looked at her crew, she smiled. "We've earned our place in the stars. Let's make sure they never forget who we are." The war against the Galactic Empire had ended, but the story of humanity's courage, creativity, and unity would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The humans had won not because they were the strongest, but because they were willing to fight harder, smarter, and with everything they had. The galaxy had learned a powerful lesson that day. Never underestimate the spirit of Earth.